Trump-backed candidate lost his primary for the first time this year. A Republican might actually be leading the race to be California's next governor. And MAGA, they're already baselessly accusing the Democratic Party of cheating. And those are just some of the big takeaways from elections that took place across the country yesterday. And we'll start with Iowa, which is a state the Republicans have effectively dominated for at least a decade. But this year, you have Democrats thinking they can be competitive in 3 of its 4 House races, its Senate election, and the contest to replace the state's retiring Republican governor. And it's actually that governor's race where you had the Trump-endorsed candidate, Congressman Randy Feenstra, losing, which is kind of huge. It marks the first time that a Trump-backed candidate has lost his or her primary since they got underway in March. Though also, I'll say he's possibly the highest profile candidate to lose a Republican primary with Trump support since as far back as 2017. That said, though, it was a close race. Feenstra lost by less than a single point to Zach Lane, a businessman and farmer whose slogan is Iowa First, with Lane now going up against Democrat Rob Sand in November. And he's actually, 1, the state auditor, and 2, he is the only member of his party holding a statewide elected office in Iowa. So an uphill battle for Dems, but one that they think could work for them. And actually the same appears to be true in the Senate there, with Josh Turek, a Paralympic gold medalist backed by allies at Chuck Schumer, easily defeating progressive candidate Zach Walz. And so Turek's going to face Republican Congresswoman Ashley Hinson in the general election to try to replace Senator Joni Ernst, a retiring 2-term Republican. But again, he's got his work cut out for him. It has been almost 20 years since Iowa elected a Democrat to the Senate. And all of that as we're kind of seeing a different situation in California, a state long dominated by Democrats with some Republicans thinking they might actually now have a chance. So there, I would argue, depending on the race, some I think are completely delusional and others, they could actually have a chance. Right, and also to understand where we're going, you need to understand California's primary system. Because in California, all candidates, whatever their party, appear on a single ballot open to any registered voter. Then, the top 2 candidates moving on to the general election, even if they're from the same party. And the state also sends a ballot to every active registered voter. And those ballots are going to continue to get counted up to a week after Election Day, as long as they were postmarked on or before Election Day. And so with California, it's not that uncommon for like several days or more to pass before a race is officially called. That said, though, based on the votes that have been counted so far, Republican Steve Hilton, a former Fox News host who also served as political advisor to former British Prime Minister David Cameron, he's actually leading the field to replace current Governor Gavin Newsom. And the Democrat Javier Becerra, who served as the Secretary of Health and Human Services under Joe Biden, he's right behind him in 2nd place. And then you had another Democrat, billionaire Tom Steyer, in 3rd place, with then dozens of other candidates trailing far behind, including Barack Obama, but not that Barack Obama. And so if everything holds here, Becerra is very likely going to be the next governor of California. Because Becerra, he'd actually been polling in the single digits, and then former Democratic Congressman Eric Swalwell, he was the favorite, and then all of a sudden he had a scandal with several women, including a former staffer, accusing Swalwell of everything from sexual harassment to sexual assault. Swalwell then suspending his campaign, resigning from Congress, although he denied the criminal and assault allegations. And actually, I'll say, funny enough, Trump might have actually saved the Democrats in California. Right, because Trump, he ended up throwing his support behind Hilton instead of the other leading Republican, who was Riverside County Sheriff Chad Bianco. And they at times were the top 2 in the polling. There was a whole scenario where maybe they were the 2 that were going to go on to the general. But of course, the Trump endorsement, it's going to siphon votes away from the other Republican. And then, of course, pending hell freezing over, it's still California. They're gonna go Democrat, at least at a state level for governor. That said, though, there is a big question mark around LA. Because current mayor Karen Bass, she led the pack there, winning almost 35% of the vote, at least according to the latest count. But she did not get an outright majority, which is needed to claim the victory. And so she's gonna be advancing to the runoff against Spencer Pratt, right, a registered Republican who won around 30% of the vote. And while Pratt, he's widely known as appearing on the early 2000s reality show The Hills as kind of a villain, he also lost his house in the 2025 Palisades fire, and he's made Bass's response to the wildfires a major focus of his campaign. That would completely overhaul the way that the city handles natural disasters. And then also the other thing that he's focused on in LA is the homeless problem, though he said it's really more of a drug problem. And so right now, it's looking like Pratt is, 1, getting the Republican vote, especially as he's Trump's preferred candidate. But then also 2, it seems like he's picking up a number of independents and even Democrats who are just tired of the Democrat establishment in LA. Right, and while I personally wouldn't vote for Spencer Pratt, this is something I've been telling to people like since they started seeing that he was running, and they've been scoffing at it. Like, can you imagine if he made it to the general election? You do not understand how much Democrats in Los Angeles do not like the Democratic establishment there. Right? A lot of people did not fuck with Karen Bass before her controversies and baggage. That's why billionaire Rick Caruso seemed like he had a chance in 2022. And again, that was before the baggage. But as far as can he actually win in a general, I'd still list him as an underdog. But we'll see. There's a lot of time from now to Election Day. Right, and Pratt, he whipped up the support pretty fast. But then also, while we're on California, I have to mention that we're seeing Trump supporters right now recycling the election fraud narrative, seemingly in preparation for November. And so, for example, last night, you had NBC's Steve Kornacki explaining how California's mail-in voting system could affect the way that the results for the mayor's race come in.
The final piece of the puzzle that we won't know tonight, right, is the late arriving vote by mail. And we're talking about probably like a third of the vote in Los Angeles, we're probably not going to be getting until tomorrow and maybe days to come after tomorrow. And there's certainly a ton of precedent here that late arriving vote by mail is going to be significantly more Democratic friendly than all of the other votes.
And with that, you've had several, we'll call them MAGA-friendly accounts pointing to this phenomenon and even sharing that exact clip to argue that the Democrats have been cheating, with people pointing to commentators like Tim Pool and Benny Johnson saying that they're amplifying that claim.